Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. So in today's video I've got a super cute mermaid shorts tutorial for you. This is super beginner friendly, literally anyone can make these shorts and they are super comfy and stretchy as well. This is a made to measure tutorial and you only really need to know the single crochet and half double crochet. So let's just get into it. Okay, so for these shorts I'm going to be using this really cute blue, pink and purple blend of yarn. This is actually a yarn that I frogged from a jumper that I just didn't wear anymore, and I really liked the softness of this yarn. So even though this is probably more of an acrylic yarn, which a lot of people typically don't really like to use for summer shorts, I like it because it is nice and comfortable and I don't find it particularly like too warm for shorts personally. But you can use any yarn you want, and I am using like a double knit or it's just slightly larger than a double knit, potentially like a chunky yarn for the yarn weight. And I've got about 400 grams in total of this yarn, but I'm unsure yet whether I'm going to need to use all of it. I am somewhere between like a small and a medium. I have like very wide hips but a smaller waist, so this project is going to be made to measure completely. So depending on your size you might need to buy more skeins of yarn or less skeins of yarn, and I'm going to be using two different hook sizes. I'm going to be using a 4mm hook and a 5mm hook. The 4mm hook is going to be for the waistband because I want it to cinch inwards tighter around the waistband, because my aim is that I don't really want to create a drawstring for the waistband. I just want the shorts to sit nicely as they are. And then I'm going to switch to my 5mm hook when I work downwards towards the end of the shorts. So the 4mm hook is purely just for the beginning, and then the rest is with the 5mm hook. And you're also going to need some measuring tape to measure yourself. You're going to want to take waist measurements, so the circumference of your waist and then how thick you want that waist ribbing to be. And then you want to take the skirt section, so this is just going to be before we make the crotch and it's going to look like a skirt. So this is the section where it starts below the waistband and it goes right down and it increases, so it kind of creates this sort of V shape. And you're going to want to measure from the bottom of the waistband all the way down to basically the top of the crotch area, and you just want to work out how many inches are in that length so that you know how many inches you are increasing for. You also want to compare how the width of the waistband measurement changes when you get to the bottom of the skirt, because you want it to increase. So for me, my increases went for 18 inches in length, and it increased from 15.5 inches to 19 inches. So that is going to be 3.5 inches that it widens. And then for the crotch slash the legs, you're going to want to basically just measure where the crotch starts and ends, so right between the legs. And for the legs, I'm not kind of worrying too much about measurements because I'm basically just going to continue from the skirt as is. So the crotch will just split the skirt in half to create the leg holes, and then I'm just going to crochet around the leg holes. You can continue increasing if you want to, or you could decrease depending on the look that you're going for. So once you've figured out the waistband like thickness and then the length between the bottom of the waistband and the crotch, you will then add those together just so that you can kind of see how long your skirt is so far. The leg section is probably going to be quite short anyway, because the design that I'm making is going to be quite short shorts, so the leg section is probably only going to be a few rows of crocheting, but you just want to kind of measure how long you want between the crotch and the leg section to be. And then the final stage that you want to measure before you start is the leg ribbing, and you don't have to do this, you could just continue the leg section as you are to finish off the length of the shorts that you want, or you can do the ribbing that we did at the beginning at the end, and you can adjust the thickness of this and the length as you want. So you want to do this using your larger hook, and you want to work out how thick you want the ribbing to be. So I'm going to probably do somewhere between 1 to 2 inches, and then 1 to 2 inches is going to be the final like length that you add to your shorts. So in total my waistband is going to be 2 inches in length roughly, and then the skirt section is going to be about 8 inches long. So far I've got 10 inches in length. And then the crotch slash leg section is just going to add about 2 more inches in the length. So that is now 12 inches. And then my ribbing is going to be about 1 to 2 inches long if I decide to do it. So that's going to be between 13 and 14 inches in length in total for the shorts. So that's pretty much how you work everything out. Or you can just decide how long you want the shorts and then section each part off to work out how many inches each section is. But that's pretty much it, and now I'm going to just move on to the first stage, which is the waistband section. So for this first stage I'm just going to lay out my measuring tape so that I can measure my chain, and I'm going to basically start by chaining the height or the thickness of the waistband that I want. So I said that I wanted somewhere between 2 to 2.5 inches, so I'm just going to chain about 8 to start off with and see how much that measures. So I'm just going to make a slip knot, and I'm using my smaller hook for this, and I'm just going to start off with a chain and see how much it measures, and then I can adjust it. So this is 8 chains. When I crochet across, it's then going to become 7 chains. So that looks kind of okay. It's just slightly over 2 inches. So I'm going to start my first row, and then depending on after your first few rows of the waistband, if it is still the correct thickness, you can go back and add more chains or remove more chains. So yeah, I'm just going to start off with 8 chains for now, and then if I need to adjust it later I will, but I always recommend that you guys start a few rows with the chains you've got, just to see if after a few rows it still measures what you want. Sometimes it can increase, or if your tension is quite tight it can decrease, so just make sure that you're measuring it. So I've got my 8 chains, and I'm going to flip the chains over to the back, and I'm going to be working into the second back bump from the hook. So I've got my second chain right here, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to insert my hook where that second back bump is. And for the waistband I want it to be nice and stretchy, so I'm going to be doing the yarn over slip stitch. So I'm going to basically yarn over, find that second back bump, so the second chain from the hook, finding the back bump of that second chain and pushing my hook through like that. Okay, so you should have the initial chain you had on your hook, that yarn over, and then we've just inserted the hook into that back bump. Now I'm going to yarn over again and pull through that back bump, and now you will have 3 loops on your hook. And now we're kind of going to do a slip stitch, so rather than like a half double crochet where you would yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, I'm just going to slip my first loop through these bottom 2 loops. So I'm just going to pull my hook down through those last 2 loops like that, and that is your yarn over slip stitch. So for this first row I'm just going to do each of those in each back bump, and then for my following rows I'm going to be doing them in the back slash front loop, and that is going to create a nice little kind of knit effect. So I'm just going to do the rest of these across the row, so yarn over, go into the next back bump, yarn over and pull through, and then pull that first loop through those bottom 2 loops. Then into the next back bump, yarn over again, insert your hook, yarn over and pull through, and then pull that first loop through the second. I'm just going to continue that now into each back bump, and at the end of the row I'm going to have 7 stitches. Okay, so that is the first row all complete. As you can see, it's got a nice bit of stretch to it, and now I'm going to start my second row. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn the work. I'm now working across the back, and in the first and last stitch of each row I'm going to just do a half double crochet, and this is going to keep your edges nice and neat, and you're not going to have any weird holes if you do the half double crochet versus the yarn over slip stitch in the ends. So I'm going through both loops, yarn over, insert my hook into that first stitch, yarn over and pull through. And instead of doing the yarn over slip stitch, I'm going to do the half double crochet. I'm just going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So that is the stitch you're going to do at the beginning and at the end of each row. Now I'm going to do my yarn over slip stitches or cross, but I'm going to do them in the front loop only for this row. So yarn over, pick up the front loop of the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then pull your first loop through into the next stitch. I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into that front loop, yarn over and pull through, and then pull your first loop through those bottom 2 loops. So now I'm just going to carry on across into the next 3 stitches, doing the yarn over slip stitch in the front loop. And then for my final stitch, I'm just going to do a half double crochet, just like I did at the beginning. Like that. Okay, so that is my second row complete, and now I'm going to start my third row. So chain 1 and turn the work, and we're now working across the front. And I'm now going to be doing 1 half double crochet in the beginning and the end stitch, and a yarn over slip stitch in the back loop for the front of the work. So row 3 is going to be in the back loop, row 2 will be in the front loop. So I'm going to do my half double crochet in the first stitch, and then my yarn over slip stitch in the back loop of the next 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then in that final stitch, I'm going to do a half double crochet, like that. So that is row 3 complete, and as you can see, you get this really nice knit effect going down. So your waistband will technically be sitting like this, and it will grow across kind of in a circle, if that makes sense. So now at this point, you can measure how thick the waistband is, and it is just 2 inches exactly, so that's fine by me. I'm happy with that, and that is basically going to be the first length of the shorts, so 2 inches, and then the rest is going to follow afterwards. So I'm now just going to continue repeating row 2 and row 3 until the waistband reaches the circumference of my waist. So I want my waistband to reach about 31 inches for me, but I want to make sure that it isn't 31 inches as it is. You want it to stretch to 31 inches. Now you don't want to stretch it like this so that it's completely moved apart all of the nice neat work that we've done. You just want to make sure that it can stretch to 35 inches, or 31 inches, sorry, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to do as many rows as necessary until the waistband reaches 31 inches with it being stretched, and I basically just keep placing it against my waist every kind of few rows and see if, you know, the stretch is getting me closer to where I want to be. Okay, so I've now completed all of my rows, so I'm now going to show you how we do the seam to join the waistband together. So you just want to fold the waistband on top of each other like this. Just fold it and make sure that your wrong side, or the side that's not got the knitted effect, is on the outside. So you're kind of folding it inside out. And you're going to chain 1 and turn the work for the final row where we're going to join them together. And I'm just going to go into each stitch with a single crochet, and I'm going to single crochet through both sides. So I'm going into the first stitch on the front and the first stitch on the back. So push your hook through and then a single crochet through both. So yarn over and pull through those stitches, and then you'll have 2 loops on your hook, and then yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. And you're going to complete that all the way across, so going into the next stitch on the front and the next stitch on the back, yarn over and pull through, then yarn over and pull through 2. I'm just going to carry this on all the way across until it is attached. And then you've got the seam attached on the inside out, and now we're basically going to flip the work so that it's on the right side. So make sure that everything's on the right side. And we're now going to work into the edge of the circle, so this edge here. So because we attached the waistband, we can still continue the work as we are here. So my first row, which is going to be the start of the skirt, is just going to be a single crochet row. So I'm going to chain 1 like this, because when we flip it onto the back, it sort of looks like a chain 2 technically, because it's quite tall after that last single crochet. So technically this is going to be a chain 2, but I only needed to chain 1 to kind of get it to that height. And I'm just going to find sort of the space into the next area. And I'm just going to grab my larger hook now, and I'm going to find the space sort of in the next area. So there's no sort of proper stitches, but you just sort of want to find the next sort of space, make a single crochet there like that, and then into the next space, single crochet, to the next space, single crochet, and I'm just carrying this on all the way around. You don't need to count how many single crochets you do, but if you prefer to, you can. And if you are worried about finding where the beginning is, you can always place a stitch marker back in that first single crochet that you made just to mark it. So now I'm just going to carry on doing a single crochet into sort of each space around the edge of the waistband. Okay, so I've just done my last single crochet, and then I have reached the first single crochet here. So I'm just going to basically be counting the stitches behind that first single crochet as that chain 2. So I'm going to basically skip those and slip stitch just back into that first single crochet. And this is the end of our first round. And then everything else after this gets a lot more clearer because we're actually going to be doing chain 2s. So I'm going to start my next round, and this round is going to be an increase round. So I'm just going to chain 2 and into the next single crochet stitch on the row below, so not the one where I've just slip stitched, but this next one I'm going to be making 2 yarn over slip stitches in the back loop. So I'm going to do 2 yarn over slip stitches into this next back loop. That's 1, and that's 2. And that is going to increase the amount of stitches in the round by 1. And then when we get to the end of the round, we're also going to be doing another one. So we're going to do 1 in the first and 1 in the last. So now into each back loop, I'm just going to do 1 yarn over slip stitch all the way around. And because this is quite a tight stitch, I kind of have a bit of a looser tension just because that's my preference. I do want the shorts to be quite stretchy, and if you remember, this is the stitch that we did for the waistband. So this is going to keep the shorts hopefully nice and stretchy, and it's going to be even stretchier with a looser tension. I'm not going super loose, but not super tight, because I want the stitch to be visible. I don't want the garment to be super dense either. I just want them to kind of be shorts that you can slip on and they're not too warm. So once I've done all of my yarn over slip stitches, I'm then just going to skip that chain 2 and slip stitch into that first yarn over slip stitch that we made. Now we can start our third row, which is just going to be a normal row. We're going to chain 2, and this row we're going to be doing single crochets in the back loop, but there is no increases for this row, so we're not going to be increasing the work at all. You just want to do 1 single crochet into each back loop all the way around, and then once you get to the beginning, you want to slip stitch back into that first single crochet. So skip those 2 chains and just single crochet to join everything together. And now, nice and easy, you're just going to want to repeat row 2 and 3 until the skirt section reaches the correct circumference. So that's going to be right at the top of the thighs, and you want to stop once it reaches above the crotch. Now you'll have your measurements in front of you, and I am going to just basically continue repeating those increased rows until I'm happy with how long the skirt section reaches. And you might find that you might not need to increase every other row, or you might find that you want to increase every single row. So just make sure that you're doing what looks good started and keep checking and trying on until you are happy with everything. Okay, so I've just done all of my increases. So I pretty much increased every other row up until the section right before we do the crotch and leg section. So I literally just increased continuously every other row, and I've just finished on a single crochet row in the back loop. So this is what the length is right now. I'll just show you. So I've got roughly just under 2 inches of ribbing, and then from the waistband down I've got about 9 inches of work. So a little bit more than I predicted, but I guess I just tried it on and that's what worked for me. I didn't want it to be super like tight around the crotch, so I just made it a little bit longer. This is why I think it's really good to try it on as you go. And then I just kind of measured out from a pair of shorts that I already own how kind of long I want the crotch section to be, which is about 5 inches. So this is going to be where we basically make a chain between the seam that we've been slip stitching into, and it's going to go all the way across to the other side like that. So as you can see, you kind of split the legs in half. So I counted, I've got 115 stitches in my round, not including that slip stitch, that doesn't count. So if you've got an odd number, you just want to -1 from that number and then divide by 2, and that is going to be your middle stitch that you just want to count around from to find the opposite side. So for me, that is going to be the 58th stitch, counting from that slip stitch. If you've got an even number, you can just divide by 2 and then find that middle stitch. It doesn't really matter, it doesn't need to be too specific, but yeah. So I'm just going to, with a stitch marker, count from my slip stitch that I've just made. So there's my 58th stitch, so I'm just going to mark that with the stitch marker. So then I know exactly where I'm going to be slip stitching into later on. So I'm going to go back to the beginning where I've just done my final row, and you're going to want to continue the sequence on from that final row that you just did. So I did a single crochet row in the back. For me, I'm going to continue increasing because I just like the idea of kind of having the kind of A-line type shape. When I've tried this on, at the moment it's still like pretty tight around my legs, so I'm happy with that, but I do kind of just want a little bit of room for it to kind of go outwards, if that makes sense. So I'm now just going to work out how many chains I need to make for the crotch section. So I wanted 5 inches for the crotch section, so I'm just going to chain like maybe 10 so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So that is about 3 inches. So I'm just going to do another sort of maybe 7, 4, 5, 6 and 7. See how that looks. Okay, so that's pretty much 5 inches, so I'm just going to go with 17 stitches for the crotch. Once you have your 17 chains, or however many chains you did, you just want to slip stitch. Make sure that your chain's not twisted, and slip stitch into that stitch marker stitch on the opposite side, and that is going to connect the crotch seam. So just make a slip stitch like that. So after you've slip stitched, I'm going to be chaining one and fastening off here because I actually want my round for the leg section to start kind of in the centre of the crotch. So it doesn't need to be exact, but essentially I'm going to be starting the leg sections right in the centre, one side on one loop of the chain and one side on the other loop of the same chain, and it's going to, the seam is going to grow this way, so we're just going to have like a straight line going outwards. So I've slip stitched and I've basically created that cross section in the centre, and now I'm just going to chain one and fasten off. And I am going to weave in this end later on, so I don't need to kind of worry about that end showing. We're gonna fix it. And I crocheted 17 chains for my crotch, so I'm basically going to find that middle stitch, and that's where I'm going to start. So I did 17, I'm going to minus 1, to get 16 and divide by 2, which is 8. And then I'm going to add on that 1 again, so that's the 9th stitch is going to be the middle. 8 either side and then 1 in the middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that is where I'm going to start. I'm just going to push my hook through, and I'm grabbing the loop on the right side because I'm going to start off with the right leg. And I'm just going to grab my yarn again and make a slip knot, and I'm going to reattach it to that section, that loop there. Okay, pull through that loop right there, and then I'm just going to chain 2 because that is going to be the start of every row once again. So just going back to the crotch section, if you have got a different number of chains than I have, then just roughly find the middle stitch. It doesn't need to be exact. You could always like kind of fold the crotch in half and find that middle stitch if you are unsure, or if you've got an even number you can just divide by 2 and find that kind of half. Like I said, it does not need to be exact, it's not really that big of a deal. So my next round is going to be the yarn over slip stitch, and I'm still going to be increasing. So I'm going to do my first round in going into the next loop, and I'm only grabbing the right side of the loop, so just these loops here. So I'm only grabbing these loops on this side, leaving these ones blank. So I'm going to go into my next loop, and I'm going to do 2 yarn over slip stitches to start that increase, like that. And then I'm going into each loop and each back loop on the rest of the leg all the way around, and then I'm going to slip stitch back into that first yarn over slip stitch. Okay, so just done my last yarn over slip stitch, and now I'm going to skip the chain 2 and I'm going to slip stitch into that first yarn over slip stitch we made to close the round, like that. Okay, so now you have the first row done of the leg, and at this point you can just continue alternating between the yarn over slip stitch round and the single crochet round. Remember, they are all in the back loop, and like I said, I'm going to continue increasing on my yarn over slip stitch round because I just want the shorts to get a little bit wider around the thighs, because my hips and my thighs are quite wide. So I'm just basically going to continue for a couple of rows, try it on and see how it looks, and then from that point forward, and then we'll plan out my leg ribbing section. And you definitely don't have to do leg ribbing if you don't want to. If you are happy with how long the shorts are and you don't want to do a leg ribbing, you can just do your final slip stitch into the first stitch of your round and then chain 1 and fasten off, and then you are all complete. Just weave those ends in, and then you can attach the yarn on the exact same point on the opposite side. So yeah, I'm just going to do the legs now and come back when they're all done. Okay, so I've just completed my last row for the leg section. I ended up doing 5 rows in total. So on the yarn over slip stitch row, I was increasing at the beginning and end, and then for the following row I just did the single crochet in the back loop, and I've done 5 of those rows alternating, and I've finished on a single crochet in the back loop row. And from this point I am now going to be starting the ribbing for the last part, and the ribbing is basically going to be just whatever thickness you want it to be. So I wanted mine to be roughly about just under 2 inches, so maybe like 1.5 inches, and I've already done this side just to make sure that it was as I wanted it, and it's pretty similar to what we did at the beginning but with some slight differences. And we're going to still be using our larger hook because we don't want the smaller hook to kind of create those like balloon effect type of shorts. So just with the same hook and carrying on from where you've just done your last slip stitch, you're now going to make a chain, which is basically going to be the length that you want the bottom part of the ribbing to be. I'm going to do a chain of 5, like that, and then into the second back bump from the hook I'm going to do my yarn over slip stitch, and then into the last 3 back bumps I'm going to do the yarn over slip stitch as well. So at the end of this row you're going to have 4 yarn over slip stitches, and then to complete this row you're going to make a slip stitch into the next 2 spaces on the actual short leg part. So just find the next stitch, push your hook through both loops and make a slip stitch, and then do the same thing into the next stitch. and that is going to finish the end of row 1. And row 2 and row 3 are going to be the rows we're going to be repeating from this point forward. So now you just want to kind of turn the work as best as you can. You don't really need to turn the whole garment, just this section here. And we're going to be working now on the back of the work. And firstly, I'm going to be skipping these 2 slip stitches that I've just done, so just ignoring them, and then into the next 3 front loops. So here, here and here, I'm going to be doing my yarn over slip stitch. So just going into the next front loop only, yarn over slip stitch, into the next stitch of the front loop, yarn over slip stitch, and then one more time into the 3rd front loop, like that. Okay. And then for that final stitch, I'm going to do a half double crochet through both loops. Like that. Okay, so that is the end of our 2nd row. And now for our 3rd row, which is going to be the 2nd row that we're going to repeat, we are going to turn the work back to the front. So we're now on the right side. We're not going to be chaining 1, we're just going to simply turn the work. So you're going to have a little bit of a tighter edge across the bottom part of the ribbing, but you're going to start your 3rd row with a half double crochet into the 1st stitch. So these edge stitches are always going to now be half double crochets, and then into the next 3 back loops. This time I'm going to do the yarn over slip stitch. So just going into the back loop now, the yarn over slip stitch, like that. And then to finish the 3rd row, we're going to do what we did at row 1. We're going to finish by slip stitching into the next 2 spaces on the actual shorts. Like that. So that is going to be the ribbing for the leg section, and that is pretty much all you need to know now for the rest of the pattern. So now, just like you did for the other waistband section, you're going to want to fold those seams together on the inside out, and then just continue making those single crochets to make the seam join together. So just single crocheting through both corresponding stitches all the way across, and then once you get to the end of the row, just chain 1 and fasten off, and then you can just weave in all of those ends, and then that is pretty much your shorts all complete. And that is everything for this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'd love to see the final results of your mermaid shorts. Let me know in the comments below what you'd like me to make next, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye guys.